Welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And me, Robbie.
And we return with our spoiler-filled review of the Lee Cronin's Mummy.
Yeah, we are getting stuck into this.
Yeah. Straight back into that mummy.
Yeah, straight back into Mummy.
Yes.
No messing about.
Loving a bit of Lee Cronin's Mummy.
Loving a bit of Lee Cronin's Mummy. So if you've just stumbled into this episode, or if you have previously hit that subscribe button and it's automatically downloaded onto your device, this is our spoiler-filled discussion. So our spoiler-free was released on Monday, so we're going to discuss our initial thoughts on the film, the gore, the good, the kind of bad, the tonally inconsistent, the bits we didn't like, all of it in gory glory detail.
Very good.
Yes.
It was released on Friday, by the way.
It was.
You said Monday.
Well, I don't know.
The episode's going out on Friday.
Yes, confused myself.
This one's Monday. We're in Monday now, but if you're listening to this in like 20 years, there's none of this matters at all to you.
No.
I thought I would wait for you to do your speech and then I would shit on you.
Yeah, thank you.
So at least I didn't interrupt you and destroy your beautiful flow that was going on there.
Thank you for letting me dig my own grave.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Lee Cronin's Mummy. I keep saying it that way because I found it weird that it went with the and then Lee Cronin in the middle between the mummy. I don't know.
Mummy, yeah.
For those. Anyway, we had the Lee Cronin's Mummy debate in the last episode. Listen to the spoiler free. Always builds up to our spoilers. So if you want the whole picture, go and listen to the whole thing.
Yes.
It's like IMAX.
Yes.
We talked last year. We were both kind of mixed on it. There were parts we said we may end up liking it more like later. I think in general we were kind of on the thing of like, although it's definitely got some interesting ideas and stuff, it's kind of as hard to like, unlike maybe we've had quite a few reimaginings of and things like that. I haven't seen The Invisible Man, although I do know that, that still contains elements that you might expect of The Invisible Man of, some parts of it. It is still. And we did Wolfman last year. We both we were both disappointed in some ways with it kind of thing. I think you were more disappointed with it than I was at the time. But, it's still kind of stuck to the ideas, I guess, of a Wolfman, but it obviously put it into this modern reimagining we've got.
Yeah.
And technically this falls into another one of those, I guess, that is trying to do this modern reimagining and changing the parts around kind of thing. And it has got those elements of, it's got someone in a sarcophagus.
Yeah.
It's got someone technically who's been wrapped up in bandages. It's got, ancient curses and talk of some kind of higher power that should never be released upon the world. It's got all of those parts. It's not maybe the main focus of the film, but it has got all of those elements in there. But I guess, I don't know. It was one of those parts where it felt like we were looking at that film, and the first act of the film felt like we could easily get that kind of following that thread of this kind of feature. And then when we actually get introduced to the character Katie in her new mummified form, technically, I guess we could say, is when she starts to for me at least, she started to feel less like, it felt less like what we would maybe expect of what we're going to get from a mummy attacking film kind of thing, and more of a possession film. Is kind of what we got to last time.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll get to that part when we get to it, but I feel like the opening, where we're introduced to the kind of main characters, just got to get their names up. I know one of them is Charlie Cannon, which is played by Jack Rayner, and Leia Costa as Larissa Cannon, his wife. And we get May Calamawy as Detective Dahlia Zakai. And I feel like the central characters that we get to it are really interesting, great, good performances all around. I feel like the actual part where we see Katie kind of being cursed, I guess you would say, or being kind of drugged and then taken away, I thought that was great. I love this idea that she's just out in her garden and she's playing, and then we're introduced to the name escapes me now, the magician Hayat Kamil, and we're introduced to her.
I was going to say, I didn't realise because she's never actually given a name.
No, she's never given a name. And I really like the idea of her behind that fence, and she's kind of obscured. And I really like the reveal where she's doing like the magic tricks, and we see the dollhouse she's got with all of like the hidden empty chocolate wrappers, and the bit with the apple. I thought that the nectarine, the
idea that she's like slowly been like groomed almost into the idea of being friends with this person. Or there's also the idea, we also get the idea of Layla. We get the mention of her daughter is like somewhat been used as part of this kind of thing, because the daughter Katie knows Layla, so she asks about her. But then we get the nectarine,
which is super cool,
and also plays on the whole like, we're thinking of the scarab, the classic scarab of the mummy.
Yes, which we have mentioned in a previous episode. And I really like that, and I feel like the element of them kind of casting suspicion on the parents and the sandstorm coming and taking, obscuring it when Charlie's trying to catch them. I really liked that part, and I really liked the kind of mystery of like, why did she take her? Why has all of this happened? How have they been found like 8 years later? I really liked the opening part, even the first kind of kill we get, where
the first scene when we get the magician character with her family, and they see a dead bird that's in the cage, and it's literally like bleeding out as if something, whether it's attacked or whether something's caused that, you're not really sure. We even get the horribleness of like the crunch as she like crushes it in her hand kind of thing. And then we go down into this literally there's a whole tomb underneath their house basically.
And it's super cool.
This little pyramid, and they open it up, and underneath it is a sarcophagus, and we get this whole scene of them lifting it up, checking, because they believe that the dead bird is a sign that actually something has happened here, and that something has been reawakened. And so we open that up slowly, and we get like a peek inside, and we get a real slow tense scene of them going up to it's really cool and effective. You get like little shots of what maybe looks like more of a classic mummy, what you're expecting, like the dehydrated body that you might see, and we get the kind of looking, going away, back and forth kind of thing, until suddenly she's freaked out when actually it does move. When she thinks it's all fine, she's like, it's fine, talking to her husband, and it's not fine. Jumps out of her, causes the whole thing to break, and the chain goes up into her husband's throat, lifting him up in the air, and literally like you're seeing him as he's getting slowly more and more choked away. It's a really cool kind of death. It's got a real cool, again it's gory.
It sets the tone. It does. The kind of the gore to be expected in the film, and then later when we see the plane crash and the sarcophagus is on it, and we see the two kind of her two sons dead. One of them kind of like impaled through the head on a tree.
We see an eyeball on the floor.
It really sets the tone for the kind of the gore that's to come, and this is where for me it also does fall into the tonal problems I have with the film as well, because it very much does set up this hyper gory film. I know we'll go into it fully when we get there, and then the second act does go into a bit more just like kind of bog standard possession-y stuff.
But I think also the opening of the film, between the sandstorm when he's being chased by the abduction to whatever's caused the plane to come down, also is one thing that kind of I thought about, because of kind of like it feels like there was some supernatural intervention that helps that to happen. And if I'm honest, none of the rest of it, it's secured within that, but we never really get the sense of any of that major supernatural until maybe the third act of that kind of something outside could be intervening to help with this kind of thing. We don't really get a huge sense of that all of the time outside of Katie. So, like, again, I was already getting that, because, again, I do think that that's something of any kind of mummy type of film. There's always been, like, a force that's helping, or a force that is like trying to push this forward, kind of thing. Which once we just get into the house and the Katie thing, it started to feel like a very different film, and it felt like for a long time we didn't really get that part of a mummy film. That was my kind of like, we get back and they've found Katie, and we get some really horrible kind of scenes. There's a lot of the body horror in terms of that was done quite well in Evil Dead Rise as well, of the focusing on the things that make you really uncomfortable. Chattering of your teeth.
Oh god,
clinking of your teeth.
I hate chatter. I hate teeth, man.
Cutting your nails, really like hard, but cutting out your nails. The idea that you're gonna like, I guess there's always that idea. It's not a comfortable feeling anyway.
No.
Cutting your own nails is not like, this feels great. It's not.
I love cutting my nails.
I mean, I literally I'm not really sure I understand people who love a good old mani-pedi, to be honest.
No.
Because the idea of sort of scraping against my nails for ages is not my idea of, that's so fucking relaxing. Well, that's like putting my dick on a fucking sander and going,
I love it.
I love it.
Well, like the thing that you can sand your nails down with.
Yeah.
I fucking hate that. I'm very weird with stuff like that.
I've only ever used one a few times, and whenever I've done it, I'm like, fucking hell, this is horrible.
It's horrid.
Nails on a chalkboard.
The clinking teeth. I have a horrid thing about teeth, man. I don't even like. I mean,
Yeah.
I do brush my teeth. Don't let the rumors, spiral out of control. But I don't like the thought of like teeth touching.
Yeah.
I hate it.
There you go. We've had many a conversation about dentists recently.
We have.
That feeling of when they get that little metal scraper thing and scrape along your teeth. Fucking hell. Those are things. And to give it to Lee Cronin, he does seem to have a good knack of leaning into these things that are really like, they're going to make you uncomfortable. Watching her nails being cut, watching generally them like having to look after her, the way she's like that with her nails and her
contorted body.
When you're literally, you're watching her teeth chatter and you're almost expecting one of them to just suddenly like chip or break because you're like, this is what this is going like, or having a child pull out her teeth and things like it's definitely things that are gonna like get to people in that way, because there is some real uncomfortable moments when you're like, fuck yeah, no. There is one scene when she's cutting the nail, when that scene where is trying to cut her nails when Katie's arrived home and they're trying to look after her literally, and the nail, and I think I winced, you winced.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I saw a majority of anyone I can see in my peripherals moved at the same time when her nail, instead of snapping, ripped off the whole of her, like basically the skin off all of the top of her toe and upper leg.
Yeah.
You're like, fucking hell.
And it's horrid. And I loved that part where, they rip the skin off and then it's like the tissue,
Yeah, and then it turns out when he looks at you, he takes layers upon layers off, and it turns out to be like literally embedded upon the skin, as if the skin is the wrapping. The flesh is the wrapping of the mummy. Basically, is that these are all of the imprints of the language are literally there, like one upon the other, and I liked that idea.
That was so interesting to me, and it was the jump between Cairo, where Detective Zyke is carrying out this investigation, and Charlie, and his wife, where they're trying to come to terms with it. He wants to know what's happened. He's chasing the truth. She wants to focus on what's going on there and trying to get her better, and they have kind of conflict there. I really liked that, and I also feel like when we're looking at the mummy itself, you gotta pay tribute to Egypt.
Yeah.
Like if you look if you look at all of the old classic films, where I read this really interesting theory where a lot of, and I don't know obviously how true this is, but for a long period of time, when the Roman Empire kind of conquered Britain and conquered parts of Egypt, we were all very connected, and then there was big moments where like when that empire fell, that we just lost contact with that part of the world. And then when the British Empire eventually went and kind of colonized Egypt, and we reconnected with it a lot, we started getting like really interested in Egypt and artifacts and all of that sort of stuff, which is why you had a lot of films around it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's very interesting to go back to see Egypt through that lens And also, like, the last time we were there, we were looking at The Mummy, you know, and it was kind of that, like, 50s style thing.
Yeah.
So I liked seeing, like, a modern Cairo.
Yeah.
And having, like, an investigation angle there.
Yeah.
I found that really interesting.
I liked I liked one is the fact that straight away my brain, because I'm not going to lie, but how often do these films basically act as if like somewhere like Cairo would still be in the 1960s or 50s, as if they don't have any technology.
they do like 90% of the time.
They literally act as if they're still like people that just push carts around the streets, and that's what they are. When it's like, no, they actually they have the same technology in this. There was actually, so what was it in? We watched Thrash.
Yes.
And there actually was a great line. That film did actually have one great line from Dave Motti, which we didn't mention in the episode, where where literally he's telling the story, and she's like, literally basically implies as if he went back and had to like go back to his like shanty in the middle of nowhere, and he was like, no, I fucking went home and ordered a Domino's and watched it. We lived in the same country, like our world is no different than yours.
Well, he said, when he goes, oh, so you went, he sees a shark, and he goes, oh, so you went back to your hut and you got a spear? And he goes, no, I went home, phoned the police and watched TV. I didn't live in the fucking jungle book. And that's what I mean. I found, like, when we watch a lot of films, particularly about the mummy, it is that old, like, this is an Egyptian
I mean, not many of them are told in the modern day.
No.
But I just meant in general, like, if you look at a lot of modern, like, so many films still act like it's fucking
like this is a man who wears a fez.
Yeah,
you know?
As if this is the 1920s in Egypt or something.
And there's, like, rickshaws.
Like, literally, like, they were like, do you know who really nailed Cairo? Indiana Jones.
It's that.
It's just that. It's like going down the street. There's a monkey with a hat on. There's a couple of carts. They're always trying to upsell you. I'm not saying there aren't parts that have. There definitely still are like that, but in general, you know, they have phones and laptops and computers, and they can order a Domino's down the street. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's what I liked. I liked seeing Cairo in a modern day perspective, and I liked the investigation parts over there. And I was very much thinking, and you know, when they get the wrappings off her legs, and they take them to the professor, and he's like, "This isn't hieroglyphics. This is like Himatayan or whatever it is." I think I just made that word up. I don't know, but sounded right. And when and I was like, "Oh, now we've got like the modern day Egypt expert. And he's going to be involved.
He's British. He's a fucking professor.
He's a British. He's a professor.
Knows what to do.
You know, of course he knows what to do.
The only thing that was surprising, if I'm honest, is that guy didn't die.
Exactly.
I was fully like, when this guy gonna like have a random scene of walking up to the house and be like, "Hello, no one's here. Oh no. I
better go into the house by myself.
I'm going to walk into her room by myself so I can die."
An old British professor walking into
there we go.
vulnerable child.
I worked out the scripture. We don't have, again, nice to actually be like, but I'm just giving you a ring to tell you. Or I'm just sending you a message or a picture to go like, yeah, here you go. Like, it's the same with her in the investigation office. Like when she gets a picture of the card and stuff like that, my brain automatically went, how are they going to get it to her? Because my brain was thinking, anytime in Cairo, they're going to have to send an owl.
Yeah, they're going to have to send an owl.
A pigeon message to get there in time. You know what I mean? Or it's going to have to go, he's going to have to send that letter. It's going to take ages. It's going to be a plot hole. And then literally the next scene, it's like you send her a picture on fucking WhatsApp. It's like, there you go.
There. It's the modern day. But
although actually, talking of the modern day, there was one thing though. I understand for time process. I was assuming that this is meant to be set in the modern day.
Is it going to be the computers?
It was. There was some outdated computers, but it was actually the VHS part. The videotape. One was I could understand the VHS. The fact that it was recorded on that maybe back. Thing. I'm still not sure why it was recorded on a VHS tape, when this is meant to be a thing that took only 8 years or so ago or whatever. So, you would have done that digitally. You'd have Katie on a camcorder thing or something like that, I don't know, or you'd have a USB stick. But that doesn't ring the same way.
No.
So I don't know if whether this was definitely modern times or not. I'm not actually 100% sure, because I swear they had a flip phone that looked quite old. So I'm questioning myself now as to what it was. But the only thing that I will say is that in the case of I thought it was a modern day was I was fine when the police station had a VHS thing because you're going to have all this old technology available. When she appeared at their house and then went, put this VHS on, I have a fucking VHS. Well, I haven't had one in 20 years.
In defence of that, they were living at an old Latin American woman's house. You know?
So now you're going to say, Spanish people are living in the 80s.
No, just the elderly.
Remember, this is the guy a minute ago that was trying to say colonization was good.
Yeah. Literally the opposite. The opposite of what I was saying. But yeah,
that's what I took out of his speech back then.
Yeah.
I just heard British colonization. I was like, we're great, aren't we?
Yeah, we're great at everything. We've never done anything wrong.
Never done anything.
Never anything.
Atrocities in history.
Yes. But no, I feel like those parts of it were really interesting.
Yeah.
The bits that weren't so interesting for me was mostly when it just felt as if we were kind of running into the possession stuff, you know?
If I'm honest, it was my major thing with the film was that, yes, when we're doing the investigation stuff, it was interesting. Some of the stuff between the parents and the way that they were feeling about it, like you could understand the way they were feeling, you know what I mean? Like it's someone lost, it's this part of you thought you were never going to know what happened to them, which is probably the worst kind of, you know what I mean? It's like the worst, you say the worst thing that could ever happen to you is losing a little child, but in terms of like they die kind of thing. It is, but I gotta be honest, the idea that you could lose them but never know what happened to them, I think that is the worst of the worst kind of thing. Yeah. And this film also is probably the worst of the worst because they actually get to watch what happened to her. So they find out what happened to her, but then actually watching your child die in a horrific way is also probably up there as well with the same kind of thing. You know, I've lost my train of thought from that part. So my problem is that when it starts to go, to us, it's the most of the Katie parts is the problem, and she's meant to be the main, you know, she is the mummy.
Yeah.
I mainly found the bits of her, I just felt that I felt that it didn't feel like Lee Cronin had a new way. He wrote and directed this, so there's no other way to hide around it. He came up with these ideas. And I didn't feel like he'd just done an Evil Dead film, and he didn't really have any new way or perspective of making the creature into the mummy possession kind of part of it, or the mummy coming alive or taking over her. I didn't feel like he had many interesting ways of doing that. I felt like he very much stuck to the playbook of Evil Dead. And that includes, and it was one thing when Katie was, stuck in her state and not being able to talk and things like that, and we were getting little parts of like her kind of scrabbling around like she was a creature in the night kind of thing, you know. That level of it I could kind of, because it's meant to be this living thing that doesn't know what to do, so I could get with that when she's crawling through the walls and stuff, like eating the scorpion off the thing. I was like, okay, I can kind of get with that kind of thing. But when it started to get to the point when she was like, I think the worst part for me, to be honest, was the other kids. When she possessed the sister. Yeah. And the sister was possessed in that scene, which, it was kind of, it had its kind of creepiness to it for a possession kind of thing, the whole, almost licking her toes and stuff like that. But again, that felt mega Evil Dead-y.
It did. Alluring her to the door.
And then the scene when the sister's now like a little creepy like possession for her. And then she's, telling her teacher she's a rat-faced cunt. Yeah. You know what I mean? And to me, like, just there, I was like, right there, cut that. Yeah. I wouldn't. We don't need that. The brothers one is done so lazily, I thought. Yeah. I thought that was so half-hearted of like just hearing by the door and suddenly the next thing he's just whacking his head into the thing. I was like, it's just like when you grab the glass in Evil Dead and they're stabbing themselves or mutilating themselves, and it just all of that just felt to me too either Exorcist-y or Evil Dead-y, but not. It didn't feel like anything that was insightful, and I just didn't think it went with the whole idea so much of the mummy. I can understand there can be possession elements within the mummy. It is someone who is a soul trapped in kind of thing, but I don't know. I feel like the mummy's always come across a bit more less like supernatural possession and more kind of something that stalks and hunts. And I felt like that wasn't really here, the stalking and hunting kind of element, which still I felt could have been present, for a mummy film.
I mean, I think they could have done the similar story that they had, where it is kind of like this evil spirit that's been kind of transferred into her, and they're trying to contain her basically, and they're trying to contain this ancient evil. I still think they could have kept that, but I think what might have worked, instead of going down that possession, because this demon is all about like sowing discontent in families and tearing them apart. I feel like maybe instead of going for that, they could have gone for like an actual transformation and changing into something she isn't, changing into this evil spirit. Not so much possession as in physically changing, because then you've got the horror of, well, your daughter, disappeared, your daughter came back to you, and now you're losing your daughter completely. You can't save her. You have to stop this kind of metamorphosis from happening. That's what I feel like it could have gone for.
That's one, actually, what you just said there is actually one thing that was actually more I was thinking was what should have been in there, was the whole, as in, it felt very, for me, it felt very quickly that we got to, literally, it was like the first day she was there, and she was already doing some pretty fucking she broke Granny's nose. She was freaking like moving about on the bed. The doctors had told her it'd be best for you to come home, but I'm sorry, when the child starts doing little flips on the bed and cracking their head back like that, it's like, she's going back to the fucking hospital.
She needs
because
to be
this is not like she needs. We can't do this. I don't care, and there is a scene then that later where the husband and wife have the fight over this of like, you're a nurse, you can deal with this, but at the same time, by that point, it's like, you literally just fucking ripped the skin off of her leg. I think she at least needs to go and get a bit of a check in at a hospital.
Definitely,
maybe go and get a check, kind of thing. Those parts of like keeping her around, keeping that on, it felt like far too quickly. We went from like day one, she was already doing some crazy shit. Day two, I was like, why the fuck are the kids still here? Like, why would you keep the kids around here, kind of thing. By day two, they'd both been thrown around enough times. I mean, I'm surprised that Granny was still about, to be honest. Because she was the one getting the shit like out of everyone. She got some right old beating in this film. So sad for Granny.
I like Granny.
No, I liked her in the film. I just meant like, sadly, she was the one, like, she's the religious one. She was kind of the one that gets the right old kicking, and there's always like the religious angle, but again, the religious thing doesn't always happen, because it does mix my signals again of like what kind of possession film we're in kind of here now, doing that. It's always there, but it's not always, I'm thinking of the whole, when he gets the million symbols in Brendan Fraser's movie. He's trying to see if any of them will work, but none of them actually do work on the Mummy, because it's not that kind of thing. He predates all of that stuff, so that stuff doesn't really give a shit about it. You know what I mean? That's what, like, in my head when I was like, I always think of it as something that predates that religion stuff. He predates Jesus and God and things like that. So why do we give a fuck about her doing this religious shit? Because he shouldn't. You know what I mean? That's one interesting aspect of it that shouldn't be there. But them as characters in this, had like with her being in the situation, I felt far too quickly went to the point when the parents were kind of like, like the mum somewhat wants to save her, but I felt that the whole idea of bringing her back from the brink should have been a much bigger aspect of this, because it's meant to be about the loss of a child and how you can get back to that child. But I felt like between the dad doing the investigations of, because he wanted to understand that bit deeper, and the mum kind of just for a long time being in kind of this state of denial about it all. That it would have worked a lot better if they had some, as part of the investigation part, they start to find something that might be that she's going to keep changing unless you can find a way to stop this kind of thing. Something that felt a bit more like, we've got a place to get to here. Because there was a point when it felt like, so what do we do here? Do we just fucking kill her? Just take her out back and just shoot her again?
Take her out back and put her down.
It felt like it got to a point where it's like the parents, are already like, day one, mum was already ready to shake and shout at her for not speaking. I mean, we're already in a pretty bad state in terms of home care for the child that is severely in a severely catatonic state. And day one, you're already fucking breaking and shaking her and screaming at her. I mean, fucking hell.
Let's get the social services.
I know that's a hard thing, and many parents get to the point where they fucking want to, like, oh my god, with their kids and stuff like that. But I think day one was a bit, oh come on, let's give them a chance to kind of build this. And so I agree with you in terms of it. I think it should have had some part of the story that needed to have a little bit more of an urgency in terms of like what to do about her. Because it felt like there was an urgency more like, let's find out what happened to her. Yeah. But I felt like Katie was just something that was left in the room to continually fuck with people.
Well, that's
because the amount of times that the parents were nowhere near her, and that's the whole reason she was able to get to the other kids or get to Granny, was just because half the time we saw her just left alone, just like locked up in the room, and then she was just this thing that occasionally, and then again, Evil Dead in us with the whole changing in voices and creepy voice, and then girly voice, and then angry voice, and none of that kind of stuff. Again, it all felt like here's the thing we've locked in the room, which is classic Evil Dead. Yeah, that's classic. We've locked her in the room and she's making all these weird noises and her face is making weird positions and stuff like that. That was too much.
Yeah, I feel like that might the kind of the lack of urgency might come to the runtime. 2 hours and 15 minutes. We were enjoying a lovely buffalo burger from Weatherspoons. You were like, this isn't hot at all. Knowing that you had a much more spice tolerance than me, I found it quite hot. We'll find out tomorrow just how hot it is. But
he's gonna add on to the end of this. So it's like the post-credit scene of this episode of just. My ring hit Stan.
My ring Stan.
It was burning a hole for
6 out of 10. But I feel like 2 hours and 15 minutes is a long time, and part of it does feel slow burn. The investigation feels like it's quite well paced. We're introduced to it a little bit. We have the back and forth and the dual kind of locations. I really like the bit with the postcards where he's like trying to find out, and then she goes to the nectarine farm. I found that really interesting, but it did feel like with Katie that they just left her for like long periods of time, and the mother had this kind of arc about trying to rehabilitate her. But I feel like after the toe bit, and she had an argument.
After she shook her, and
after she shook her,
that stopped.
That stopped, and then it was like, okay, we're going to start.
We didn't really see if I'm honest. That was a point when it started going much more to Dad.
Yeah.
And the mum bit, I don't really know exactly what Mum was doing until Granny went out the window.
Yeah, and it feels like it kind of... I get it was trying to do this slow spread, and the other kids are getting infected by it now. But for me, it just dragged the pacing down a little bit.
If I'm honest, I think it might, I feel like one kind of thing, just kind of throwing out fixes that I can put in my brain that I felt what might have made it better. I feel like this, with the investigation element, which I've actually thought were really interesting, I feel like this could have done with being, I've said Omen, Exorcist, things like that, but I feel like this maybe could have done with a little bit more of a Katie being a little bit more able to give us a little bit more of that kind of Damien-ish kind of like a little bit of a, we're investigating her because the dad's not trusting of who she is kind of thing. The dad's not really believing, like her other kids are starting to act weird and he thinks it's because of Katie. But if she wasn't in this like possessed girl state, I feel like I would buy this a bit more, that she was like the mummy that's kind of come back in this form that like is there, that can kind of do it. I know that sounds like it's done, but I just think the investigation part of this worked so well and the build-up worked so well that if she was this character that was much more able to interact with everyone or appear as if she's getting better and she's doing better, but then weird shit's happening in a kind of omeny damony way, we might have been able to feel a little bit more like, shit, when the officer suddenly is like, fuck, the nectarine, what did you say about nectarine farm? Like, that all would have felt a bit more urgent. The detective is building towards almost trying to stop something that maybe the family haven't realised yet.
Yeah.
They haven't worked out yet, kind of thing. Like, in that kind of way. But it didn't feel like I said, the spoiler-free one. I just feel like there was a lot of stuff that they were finding out that it didn't feel like kind of urgent enough within what was happening when we're just ignoring Katie in the room. Yeah. Like, it felt like a lot of this information would feel a lot more urgent if you're like, fucking, yes, we know that Katie's not what she appears to be, but, they don't know this, and now this is urgent that they know this information. But everyone at this point really is fucking like, there's a fucking weird thing in our room. Yeah. there's a fucking monster in our room. Like, she's a monster, right? none of us are liking her anymore.
Yeah.
We got to get her out of this house. Just oust her. You know what I mean?
Just oust her.
Just get rid of this kid out of our house.
Give it to the coyotes.
And that's it. Like I feel like putting her fully into that state of being this weird possessed, girl state made it so that there was very little that Katie could really do other than become the possessed girl. Other than become that Regan, basically, kind of thing. And I think that might have limited what it could be, and it might have worked better if the mummy was able to go out and do more things to therefore maybe make it seem like she is able to do things, or even taking things from people. Because I do feel like the whole taking of souls or taking of lives should have been like maybe a little element of the deaths here.
Yeah.
Taking life from someone has always been a major part of a mummy. That is like one thing that it is, I know you reinvent them, but that could have still worked really well and in a really good body horror way as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like it's if we kind of start moving towards the third act, I feel like with the grandmother's death, I don't think I was too huge on that. I feel like that felt very much like something we've seen in just a possession film. I didn't really.
It was one I've said. As I said in the spoiler free, that was the one I said was basically every death in the Omen put into one person.
Yeah,
because it was literally like strangled by the bees, like the one that hangs herself at the beginning, but then crashes through the window, kind of thing. And then you've got the dogs. When you got the dogs in the film, you've also got. It's not a head chopping off, but you've got the whole car rolling down, like the head chopping off. Like you've got her splatting down onto the car. It all felt very, because you get the person who falls it gets pushed out the window and things like all there. It was just like, I'm going to take all of the scary things of the Omen, I'm going to put it into one death.
Well, it felt
it was very over the top.
With Karis jumping out the window, and I don't know if you noticed, but the shot after, where the mum comes in. Yeah. And you could see a cross in the window. Oh. The broken window, and it makes a cross. I thought it was shot really well. Yeah. And most of the film is.
There was a kind of a cool her being eaten by DK. When it shows her like guts being like pulled apart and stuff. It did just feel so over the...
But it felt so over the top, and that was the point where it went from kind of a slow burn kind of investigation, what's going on, weird, interesting, to being like very, I don't want to say predictable, but maybe a bit more boilerplate kind of possession film, to them being like, okay, this third act we're going to do a bit more Evil Dead. Yeah. It felt like before then we'd had like a good level of gore. The first death, quite gory. The impaled head, the teeth and the skin and all of that body horror stuff was good, but it felt relatively kind of like grounded. And then we see like a woman be choked, thrown through a window, hit by a car, and then eaten by dogs. Yeah. I was a bit like, what's going to happen next? Like it's like an air, like a blade from an airplane going to land on her.
There is a certain thing of, because you've also already had lots of little scenes of skin being taken and stuff like that. So there is that whole thing of how much of this can you see before by the third act you're kind of like, I'm a bit desensitized to all of like this kind of level of stuff now. Like I'm a bit desensitized to skin being peeled off, because I feel like I've seen enough skin now that's been peeled off that I'm not fully, I think there is a point when you start thinking, oh, this is just kind of vulgar for the sake of being vulgar. But like you just said about it being like, I guess the thing with if thinking back to his work in Evil Dead Rise was there was a part of you thinking, oh, they're not going to fuck. And then this is a family of three, and even though this is Evil Dead, they're not going to fully take it, and they're not going to fully like take over the kids and have them be possessed and be. And then he did. Yeah. And it was like, oh fuck, okay, so you are willing to push all of those boundaries, kind of thing. And then with this one, it felt kind of, I don't know why, because I was aware of that, I was suddenly like, right, so this is the problem is now, because you're repeating a similar-ish formula where you've got family, you've got kids, you've got stuff like that. I now know that you're willing to push that boundary with the kids, so it's not surprising that you're going to fuck with the other kids as well. Yeah. A kid smacking his head into a thing is not really that like, oh god, okay. So all of that felt like it was like, yeah, I was, to be honest, because I knew his work, I was like, I was fully expecting majority of that, and possibly worse, to be honest. I was possibly even expecting him to go further with the kids, to be honest, because things like that. But it does then get to the point when it is kind of all about that kind of like at the wake for the grandmother, and you've got the kids kind of watching as the ceiling, her coming through like a little termite.
Yeah.
The little daughter like pulling at the thread of the mother's mouth and the teeth, which was kind of funny,
Yeah, the deviled eggs.
The deviled eggs when she pulls the blood and then splats all over the
and her being sick into the glass was fucking gross.
And it was one of those little kind of that scene had a little bit more the touches of humour kind of that you were maybe expecting at other points, to have in there.
Yeah.
So I didn't mind. That was the one bit with the kids' possession when I wasn't so against it kind of thing. But at the same time, it also was into it with the whole the brother just being taken, and I didn't really like any of the stuff with the brother, to be honest.
No, I just thought that the kind of the over the top vulgarity, like we said, very Evil Dead.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned before, Evil Dead kind of tonally is quite consistent and has an element of fun. And yes, it's mean spirited, but it's also kind of funny throughout it, tongue in cheek. Whereas for what was 2/3 quite serious and relatively taking itself, quite straight faced, to then just be quite over the top and quite bizarro.
Katie's suddenly talking loads to them in all kind of different voices. We've got the grandmother getting killed over the top.
Yeah.
We've got much more kind of signs of Evil Dead-y things, licking of toes, or, body parts, things like that showing off. And then, so we get the whole wake part, but then we get it pretty much builds towards the final. We get one of the more harrowing parts is when the detective arrives with them and shows them the tape of Katie.
Yeah.
That one that's a better scene in the film.
That's really good.
Because that's really quite hard to watch, and it is more effective because of the scenes you saw Katie in at the beginning of the film. Helps you remember that she was just a kid, and she was just this than what you've seen the rest of the film.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard. The acting's really good in the scene.
Yeah.
They're really. That they have to push. They're we need to push on because we need to know what's happened, what is actually going on here. But then watching their child basically die and then be taken over by that thing, and the weirdness that, I think even with you watching, I think there's a weird kind of getting her out. When she gets possessed, there's also this kind of in your head, at least the parents seem to stop for a moment after she has the. Again, of course, the weird puking stuff into the throat.
Yeah.
I don't know why it had to be. I'm not that again. That to me was a bit too.
I wasn't
Evil
against
Dead
it.
Kind of thing for me. I knew it was going to be puking into the mouth, and I was like, why does it have to be puking in the mouth?
Well,
I don't. I think there are other ways that those things can be shown, but when she kind of is taken over, the parents kind of stop from it, almost as if it's but at least it's over for her, kind of thing. It's stopped. She's out of it now. She's gone. Almost believing that she is pretty much gone. She is fully taken over. There's nothing we can actually bring Katie back. She's gone, kind of thing. That part was harrowing. That was quite hard to watch, and I like the style of how it was shown in a very kind of we're watching a real film, and those kind of parts with the detective learning all this information, including when she's questioning Layla, the girl from before that scene, kind of thing, and finding out all of that part was one of the better parts of the film, definitely. But then pretty much straight from that we're into the final act.
Yeah, with a big kind of battle, and very mixed feelings on this.
Yeah.
I liked most of it. The one bit I hated was when Katie, said your daughter's she's not your daughter anymore. I'm her daddy now. Yeah. And I was thinking, this is an ancient evil that predates Christianity. Why is it speaking like this? It did feel very Evil Dead.
I mean, come on, the grandmother was so fucking Evil Dead.
Yeah,
the face expanding, the makeup, it was literally out of the first.
Come and taste me,
literally that. When she did that, I was just okay, this is why you're saying it, but really it's this shouldn't be Lee Cronin. Then if we're going to say this is the humour we're going to put in, because really this is just, you can technically say Lee Cronin inspired by Sam Raimi, Evil Dead, you know, kind of thing. Like, because he's just playing from the same hymn book that Sam Raimi wrote, really. You know what I mean? You know, it's all kind of that same stuff. It's not, you know, even with Evil Dead Rise, it wasn't like a new, you know, Fede Alvarez had done the same with a remake, which did a lot of the similar kind of stuff, you know what I mean? It was just the fact that the story was kind of tighter and well done, you know, not against Lee Cronin. He did amazing practical effects. He did some really good stuff with that. But it is still like, you know, I mean, that was what took me out of it, to be honest. And my thing that let me down, to be honest, mainly with this part was the build-up of the whole... We have that scene when she says to the brother, do you want to come and take, you know, get me out of my clothes?
Yeah.
Again, you've got a weird... You know, that's a weird thing to say anyway for an ancient thing, but, you know, okay. And I was like, okay, we're taking off the skin. And I was like, okay, well, the skin's meant to be the bandages. So technically, if we think of it the bandages, then this is when you remove the skin and another form is underneath. I was like, are we about to get underneath this is actually that the leather had the skin and the skin had been imprinted by the leather. So technically, the skin is the, you know, a reinvention. You know, the skin is the cloth and underneath it is going to be like a skeletal kind of more of a weird mummy kind of ish kind of thing where we're going to feel a bit more like we're getting a bit of a classic mummy look kind of underneath there or something like that.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, are we got to go like... We go CGI, you know, like Scorpion King style, where it's like really bad CGI.
Moves all the skin and then out comes Dwayne
Rock Johnson. And go back to the point with the vomiting, you know, I at that point I was like, is it going to be like CGI mist or CGI like energy that goes to her? So I was pleased it was vomit.
I mean, I wasn't fully expecting there to be like this like under that. I was more just thinking of some kind of, you know, more withered or like more of a mummy-ish kind of
exactly.
look,
I was thinking that, but I was...
And
there's a part of me that was thinking, we're getting like CGI, like green screen here.
I'm getting a ball of gas.
A ball of gas. But instead, we just get...
I couldn't really tell what the difference was apart from she now has black going down her eyes.
Yeah,
but her face still looked the same, even though at one point it looked like she was ripping the skin from her face.
Yeah.
I didn't really notice. I'm sure if I looked carefully, I could see that the skin was all removed around the hands and legs, but I couldn't really see why. What was the point? Removing the clothes? What? I couldn't understand what the reason for it was, apart from to be grotesque and vulgar. Like, you know what I mean? And that was my little kind of bit when I was like, right, so that... You've done that just to show some body horror, and I don't really believe that it should be there just for the sake of doing it.
I guess narratively, if it's the, you know, if the mummification is what keeps it contained, then I guess it's stripping that off makes it stronger.
Yeah,
but it also comes back to, I feel like that could be a reveal of its
if they'd completely
form.
removed her form, it would have changed what the ending is, to be fair, because they wouldn't be able to probably go back on that kind of thing. So they need to keep it the same. But then the problem there for me is that then we just get this kind of floating, moving creature that's flying around and jumping on people and things like that, and not, you know, it doesn't feel like she's any different apart from, oh, we've got some sand coming through the windows now. You know what I mean? Like, we've got a granny who is purely, you know, straight out of Evil Dead. We've got a possessed girl that's hopping around onto people, and it just feels more and more like we're just kind of doing stuff that I've seen lots of times in different ways, in different possession ways, and people like getting jumped on top of. You know, the only to complete the homage, the only thing I was expecting was Daddy to take the thing and then jump out the window and do a full-on Karis.
I thought he was going to do that.
It was. So I was glad that in the ending that it somewhat came back to that, you know.
I thought the ferry ending I thought was really cool. Yeah. You know?
I liked the fact that although Daddy took it on, that we did get something, because I think because of how at times it came across from that middle to that third act, how mean-spirited and you know, it came across at times. There was points in mine where I was like, I'm not sure whether to just call this like a vulgar piece of crap, to be honest, because I'm feeling a bit over there. So I was quite happy that they did find a way somewhat to bring Katie back, because it felt so harsh, everything that had kind of gone down. It was such a harsh reality of it all. Kind of thing. So it was quite good in a way that they would bring out, even though she, you know, majorly scarred. You know, probably more than she actually was. Like, it felt like she probably wouldn't have gone back quite to the way she looked. But I was happy that we were able to take them back to some kind of normality that, yes, Daddy technically is gone, but we've got the kids kind of thing.
Yeah.
We've got, the kids are kind of back and safe, and the mum's able to deal with that. But and Daddy's in a box in the basement.
Yeah.
Tapping away with his Morse code.
Yeah, and I like that. You think that that's all got to be the end, and then they do add a bit of a bit more salt into the wound of
a bit of a vengeance here.
Yeah, I like that. Where they go back to the original magician, and
she didn't die.
She didn't die.
She was shot.
And I like that. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good way to end it.
I thought it was good. Yeah, it was that kind of thing that you kind of want the parents to get the revenge on the person who's, because at the end of the day, whether she was trying to keep off demonic things or whatever, trying to protect her family, she chose to destroy their family in order to protect her own kind of thing. And she was a piece of shit to her family anyway. Because
she was.
They were trying to enjoy a nice song at the beginning of the film, and she had to be a dick about it.
Yeah, shut up.
And she can't store his tongue, but
yeah,
that's the interrupting the song is honestly way worse.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, no, I liked that venging part to the end. Bringing Daddy back into the room and to be like, we know what we're going to do to you now. Let's get
I like
let's transfer this over and get you could be the one trapped forever.
Yeah.
I like so I liked that ending part, but and I don't know. Reflecting on it now, to be honest, I thought I liked the third act, but now I'm thinking about it more. I don't actually think I did fully like the third act.
Yeah.
I think the first act was good. The second act was kind of middling to kind of somewhere in the possession film zone, but it had some interesting meat on the bones of the investigation parts.
Yeah.
And the investigation part did technically come to a good ending of the whole showing what happened with the possession and stuff, and all of that stuff was interesting, but that final act of them fighting with Katie and stuff, I just don't feel that the Katie thing, in terms of a mummy kind of film, had enough idea of what actually to do with the mummy. I think that's the main problem. They had some really good ideas about the ideas around the mummy and why it happens, and all that stuff was really good, but when it came to actually the actual creature at the centre of this, it felt way too much like that Lee Cronin just went, well, I just made an Evil Dead film, so I could just do that stuff again, can't I?
Yeah, I feel like it was a bit too much, a bit too Evil Dead-y for me, and I would have liked them to maybe try something a bit more interesting than that. I get we want to try something different than the usual. It's a man walking around.
Yeah,
but
I feel like the kid aspect and the family aspect already made it interesting enough that I think he should have brought a little bit of what made the original mummies attacking. Whether it's slightly more kind of the old idea of them going around taking brains out of people's heads or whatever, the slasher kind of route, or whether it's more of the taking the energy or the soul of others to make themselves to give them more power or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think there are interesting ways that they could have shown that kind of idea while still having what he's got and still having his body horror kind of aspects easily.
Yeah.
But I just don't think the whole making it basically like just another kind of possession kind of film was the right route for the character. No, I think that's what brought it down really. Outside of there was lots of good performances, lots of good parts, but it's just that part doesn't quite hit the mark for me. It's not something I'd be interested if you were like, we're doing a second The Mummy, Lee Cronin's The Mummy. If it's just going to be another Evil Dead, then just tell him to make Evil Dead.
Lee Cronin's
he
The Mummy
makes a good, he makes an alright Evil Dead film. So stick with that. But if I was Lee Cronin, I would be saying to him, I'd try something a bit different. Stick with your, the way you show horror and body horror and stuff like that is great. But I think we could try a little bit away from the possession part of it.
Yeah.
Try some new things.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I did enjoy it. But as the film went on, I kind of lost a bit more interest. And like you said, on reflection, I don't know how big I was on the third act. It may be that I rewatch in the future and I kind of actually really enjoy it. I don't think it was a bad film. No. I just feel like you said, it was a bit too Evil Dead-y for me.
It just wasn't. It just doesn't matter. The packaging on the tin. If we called it anything else, I said, the Reawakening, whatever it is, and then you'd be like, oh yeah, that was alright. That was kind of thing, kind of interesting mix of blend of The Mummy and Evil Dead and stuff like that. I think it was just putting that label on it is partially what's kind of hurt it as well.
Yeah,
I think that because just in my head, but taking it away from that, that still doesn't take away that if I took it away from that, it still doesn't feel like it's not retreading ground that's quite fresh.
Yeah.
You know, in many ways, like it's still not a kind of like it's not maybe doing his things as new as I think maybe the director thinks it is.
Maybe, yeah.
You know, that kind of part of it, and so you know. But, you know, hopefully you stuck around for the post-credit scene.
Yeah.
With Mr. Rick O'Connell coming in.
Yeah, that was
just
great.
blasting the fuck out.
That was
the
great.
The magician mummy just destroyed.
That was great, to be fair. You know?
Badass scene, but
yeah.
Yeah, we wait for the real one.
We wait for the real mummy.
Yeah. I don't think there'll be another mummy after that one. I think that'll be the one.
Yeah,
that's the mummy.
That's
Rick O'Connell mummy. It's not that. By the way, actually, I do actually want like a classic mummy film that is like more full on horror.
Yeah,
I actually do want that.
That'd be cool.
I just don't think anyone, but no one's really done it. Like I know the first mummy action horror film had some really cool aspects, but I do wish that someone would make more like in the universal horror, like classic kind of style of like a mummy kind of horror kind of one.
Yeah.
And make it more like that with that kind of it's coming to attack people or it's going after specific people for reasons and stuff like that. Like that classic monster movie, but not like in a full on reimagined way, like it's just a classic but with actual real horror elements. Yeah. But you know, I believe that I'd like to actually think that the new mummy with Mr. Brendan Fraser is being done by the Radio Silence who did the Scream films and Abigail and stuff. So I would love the fact that if they came back with it and decided to do a little bit more horror with it, kind of thing. Go back to the first film when it was a bit more horror, because the two sequels were mainly just action films.
Yeah, well, we shall see.
In 2018.
In 2028.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean...
I have a tendency at the moment to fuck up my dates on this
show. Well, I mean, if you have watched Lee Cronin's The Mummy, come and let us know your thoughts. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMDH Podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got a great season planned for you. As always, play us out, fellas.